I have actually have another business. I have Rehoboth Social Podcast Network.
Absolutely.
So we do a lot of podcasting, and we were doing a lot of podcasting prior to this starting. We have a studio, and I have, Jenna and Tiffany and Carlos and Julie Fisher. I have a bunch of people that podcast with me, for me, and we've had to adjust in that business, and we have been able to use technology. Zoom, Carlos and I we do that Pearl Jam podcast, and we've been doing them through Zoom. My friend Tiffany, we do a podcast. We've been doing a lot of those through Zoom. Her and I have just started going back into the studio, but, and the other thing is that a lot of technology came out, and then you had to try to pick and choose and try to figure out which one was the best one to use. And Zoom seems to be really good. Has great audio, has great video. This is a nice format for that, this kind of back and forth. Some of the other podcasts like I do with Carlos, it's a lot of joking and having fun, and you tend to talk over one another. So that the struggle kind of is in there. But we actually did a great podcast with a singer from a band called Black Circle, which is a Pearl Jam tribute band over in Brazil. And the singer actually did a podcast with us through Zoom. We would not have been able to do that without this technology. So it was really cool. So we, hair business, no. Podcasting business, definitely.
When did you start Rehoboth Social?
Well,
it's been a couple years now,
well,
right?
So I started Rehoboth Social. I actually created an app called the Rehoboth Social app. And it was an app that promoted things that went on in Rehoboth, whether it was the beaches, restaurants, dining, photography, music, stage. Had like 10 categories. It seemed like a good idea at the time to build it. I don't regret it, but I am competing with Facebook or an Instagram, and those things do a pretty good job. So it didn't really do much. I mean, it had a little bit of a following. I'm that guy that I can get about 80% done, and then that last 20% I'm not sure what to do with, and that's kind of what happened with that. But I was like, well, I want to do something with this app, and I was doing a lot of vlogging with drones and photography, and then I said, you know what? I love Joe Rogan's podcast, and it's just a guy talking to people. I can do that. I mean, I really do that every day with the client. Every client I have is basically a podcast. I think one of the arts of hairdressing, they always say it's 20% talent and 80% personality. And, trying to, understand how to have a conversation, carry a decent conversation, staying out of the bounds of like politics and the forbidden things. And, over 15 years, I've just learned to talk. And there was a guy, I don't know if you knew Matt Haley, but he was clearly a guy that was involved with restaurants, but behind the scenes, he was a big help for a lot of people that wanted to start small businesses. And he was a good friend of mine. And I remember I was chatting with him and I was complaining about something. And he's like, if you want to open a salon, open it. If you don't, then shut the, up. And I said, well, I'd like to open a salon. He goes, and he put in a call to Rhonda Myers over at Community Bank, who would be the only bank that would help me with a loan to open a salon, by the way. So support your community bank. And he just put me in touch with the right people and gave me that kick off the couch that I needed to find the courage, I guess, to open a salon. And so the Rehoboth Social Podcast has always been just about one small business helping another. It's taking people and kind of what you're doing, and I think that's really great. It's taking, people that have been sitting on the couch, made that leap, opened a small business, and just have them on and share that story so that maybe somebody that's working for somebody or, whatever it is that really needs that encouragement to maybe take that big leap to maybe try opening their own small business, to share that story and try to get that out there so that people know that they're not alone in that scary time right before you take the leap.
Definitely. I mean, I don't know how long you've lived in the area for, but 20 years ago, it was all small businesses around here. I think there was probably the McDonald's, and Grand Slam was the next big chain, I think, or Grotto's Pizza. But
yeah, I've been here 25 years.
Yeah, so it's changed a lot, but small business is still very key to our local economy and everybody's economy throughout the country. It's kind of what our country is built on.
Well, but we've lost, you know, I had this weird feeling or this idea the other day. I'm like, what happens if in the end of this, like small businesses, like little TV shops start coming back, or like, I'd love to open like a little store that sold just podcast equipment. I
Like a Radio Shack.
like a Radio Shack. Exactly. But, Radio Shack and those businesses all lost because of these like Amazons and stuff, which, they're fine, but um I don't want to buy stuff on Amazon. I have to because it's really my only choice. But it'd be cool if, we started to see some like small businesses come back. I used to love to go to Radio Shack and look at all the wires and connectors and batteries. To touch and look at and talk, and to talk to people that are passionate about, products that they're selling. Um, I miss that. I'm not, since then I'm not sure that'll happen, but it would have been kind of cool. I used to love going to the place that sold TVs and turning them all on.
I heard an interesting kind of like an analogy of what one it was on. Oh, what was that podcast? Planet Money. A restaurant owner said, right now our economy is kind of going through like a fire, and when a fire goes through a forest, it usually takes down all the biggest, oldest trees, and that allows for the seedlings and the smaller trees to really flourish and grow because they're not being blocked from the sun. So I think there's potential for small businesses to kind of come out on top after this. Not that I want anybody to fail, but it's you want to support your local community, your local small businesses. So that's what I would like anybody to get out of who watches this podcast. And I think that's the same thing you're shooting for with the Rehoboth Social.
Yeah, well, and plus I like podcasting.
Yeah.
We also do other ones too. We do a Pearl Jam podcast. We do the Film Effect with Tiffany. We do a Anonymous, which is an honest look at recovery with Jenna. We do the Delaware Live Music podcast. We did a podcast for Firefly. We do the Rehoboth Social. So yeah, we do a bunch of them. It's always, I love providing a place for people to do what they love doing. Whether it's a hair salon, a podcast studio, anybody that's podcasted, anybody that podcasts for me, it's always been thank you. Since this suggestion came up and since we decided I was going to try to do this, I can't stop thinking about it. I can't stop, dreaming and fantasizing what I can possibly do or the joy that this is going to bring me. And, there's something to that. It's really cool. And then they start podcasting and then they have a great time. I'm sure you've gone through it. I mean, it's fun. It's fun.
Yeah. I think a lot of people don't always get to hear other perspectives on certain conversations that they would like to have. So it's good to hear another back and forth, especially somebody in your more localized area who has maybe a little bit more similar walk of life. Yeah, I enjoy it. That's why I do it. And in February,
you're gonna come on my podcast.
Absolutely, I will be there. We'll have to set up a time after this, but yeah, I'm definitely interested.
Mine's going to be in the studio.
Yeah, so it'll probably be a little while before I get to go in there, but you can count me.
Are you in quarantine?
I'm self quarantining a little bit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, just for the time being, we'll see how everything pans out after the economy opens up a bit more for a bit longer. But before all this, how many times were you podcasting, say a week or a month?
I was putting out, so when I first started podcasting, I was putting out 3 podcasts a week. And I've done, I think, about 150 podcasts. And then you start going, and you'll find this in your podcast, you got to have people. I mean, you can't just sit there and talk to yourself. So I was like, well, geez, I better start pace it back a bit. But we were also doing the Firefly podcast. I was doing that with Dion Lamb, Trey Krause, who owns Carlton's, another girl, Ashley, and um, that was fun. I mean, we were going through all the bands. You know, that's a big thing that comes to Delaware. Dion Lamb is like the king of Firefly. I mean, that guy can, you know, he loves all the bands. So I had him on, and Trey. Trey does 99.1 the Rehoboth radio. Check him out. He's great. And so we would get together and we would just start going through this music, and we were having a blast. And then they obviously canceled that. So I was posting a Rehoboth Social podcast. I was posting a Rehoboth Social Firefly podcast. We were posting Anonymous. We were posting probably 5 podcasts a week. The Rehoboth Social, I limited down to 1 a week. That way I had some, you know, to be able to stretch it out a bit. So yeah, anywhere from 3 to 1 a week.
Yeah, that's a good pace.
Yeah.
Where can everybody find your podcasts and any information about your salon?
Well, all of our podcasts are on Spotify, Audio Boom, iTunes. We actually have a landing page on iTunes now, which shows all of our podcasts. No, we have a landing page on iTunes. I don't know if I said that, iTunes, but Audio Boom, Spotify, iHeartRadio, all of them. Anywhere that has podcasts probably has a podcast.
And I'll put links to all those down below.
Sure, thank you. And then for the salon, I mean, our best information really comes on Facebook.
Okay.
I've had a website, but it's you know, Facebook does such a great job now. I mean, it's hard to. We're actually working with Ashley Hubert. She does the Visit Rehoboth little book, and she's actually helping me build a website for the Rehoboth Social Podcast where we can put all of our podcasts. And I think that'll be rehobothsocialpodcast.net or .com or something. I haven't figured that one out yet, but if you're looking for it, you can find it. If you type in Rehoboth Social, it's there. We have a ton of stuff going on. So
awesome.
Maybe we can get you on the network.
All right. Sounds good to me. We'll talk more later.
Absolutely.
Well, Tom, thank you very much. Everybody look for those links down below to follow all of Tom's businesses, podcasts, and the future website landing page of the Rehoboth Socials. Thank you very much, Tom.
You got it, man. Thank you.
Have a good one.
You too, brother.